All right, this is going to be actually a really fun video to make. Everyone has been asking for a Havoc rework. It's been sort of the buzzword going around for honestly the past year. Everyone just wants Havoc to get reworked because they're not happy with how it plays, with how it's performing. So our good friend Kaiba here went to the ultimate dev, ChatGPT, and said, hey, rework this class. Tell me what it looks like. Here we have it. We have a fully reworked Havoc Demon Hunter Hero Talents, class, Spec Tree, everything. We're going to read through this. I'm kind of going to give you my thoughts as we go through it. I'm going to point out why certain things wouldn't work, why they would work, and we're just going to find all the holes, poke all the holes through it for fun. So this might give you an idea of potentially some things you might want when we get an actual rework. And just in general, this is kind of fun to look at. And it tells us that, there are other options for talents and things like that, because it's hard sometimes to come up with these things on your own and imagine what we could be offered and what a dev might put into a rework. So we're going to read through this and we'll see how it goes. To make the Havoc Demon Hunter class more viable in an expansion like the War Within, a few key updates could be made to enhance their performance in both solo and group content while keeping their fantasy and playstyle intact. That sounds good. I'm on board already. Number 1, improved survivability. Havoc Demon Hunters are often seen as glass cannons with high damage output but low durability. Maybe. Not as much of a glass cannon as like a mage. Historically, we have not been glass cannons. We've been actually very tanky. It was only in Dragonflight that we really started to struggle on that front because we didn't have enough defensives to keep up with the one-shots. It's a little bit better now, but definitely not as bad as it was in Dragonflight. To address this, improvements to their self-healing and defensive cooldowns could be crucial. New talent/ability, Demonic Resilience. Okay, so this isn't an ability, it's a talent. A passive talent that boosts the healing from Metamorphosis or other leech-based abilities. So going into meta does give you extra leech because you're going into demon form. This is saying that it would just buff leech. Alternatively, adding a defensive cooldown like demon spikes could give them brief but powerful damage reduction, making them tougher in high stress encounters. So this is suggesting giving Havoc demon spikes as well as blur. Could be cool, but I don't know. Having 2 really low cooldown defensives to press like that might be overwhelming to try to juggle both of them. But again, this is all, this is all make-believe. We're making this shit up as we go. So healing through damage, Demon's Kiss, a talent that allows a percentage of damage dealt to be converted into healing for a short duration. Is that not leech? Helping sustain them during long fights or when there's less external healing. To me, that just sounds like leech. Could be wrong though. Increased utility in groups. Demon Hunters often struggle to offer significant utility in raids or dungeons compared to other DPS classes. Adding group utility could make them more desirable for team compositions. Okay. This is kind of an issue that we face now. In Mythic Plus, we do decent damage. We're not the best, we're not the worst, but what we don't bring to the table is Lust, Battle Res, things like that. When all of these other classes that are out there right now that are doing really good damage are also bringing those extra things to a group comp. So it's almost a no-brainer to take them over Havoc. New utility ability. Okay, this is another ability, which means another button. Just keep that in mind. An ability that grants a buff to nearby allies, increasing their critical strike chance or haste for a short time. This would give Havoc Demon Hunters a unique way to support raid groups in line with their Leader of the Hunt theme. It's called Eye of the Legion. From how I'm understanding this, it would be a button that we have that we press, and it gives our group extra crit and haste for a short time, meaning we'd press it and it wouldn't last very long, and then we'd have to press it again, depending on on how long the cooldown is. I'm not sure if there's any abilities like that in the game that are like full-on group-wide buffs that give something like crit or haste. I know Augivokers have certain things that give maybe versatility when they use their empowered spells, but this would be something very different. If there is anything in the game that maybe I'm not thinking of right now, please let me know down in the comments. Improved Chaos Brand. Chaos Brand could be expanded to not only increase damage taken from Chaos abilities. Okay, that's not what it does. Chaos Brand makes the target take extra magic damage, which technically is Chaos damage. Chaos damage is magic damage. Chaos Brand on its own doesn't work exactly like this way. Chaos Brand could be expanded to not only increase damage taken from Chaos abilities, but also offer a debuff to the target. That's what it does. that reduces their resistance to other forms of magic. Okay, so it's getting two things confused here. The second half of this is what it actually does in game. So maybe it's saying it should do this as well, increase damage taken from chaos abilities. So that would give us, the demon hunters, a little bit extra damage on those targets. And everyone else that is benefiting from Chaos Brand would only be getting the increased magic damage. They could do something like, you know, they've reduced Chaos Brand from 5% down to 3%. So maybe they leave it at like 3% increased magic damage taken, so that benefits the whole group. Then maybe there's 2% that's just chaos damage. This would make demon hunters more versatile in dealing with different types of damage and support team synergy. Sure. So yeah, as we read on, just keep in mind that this was put together by AI. So there's going to be a lot of incorrect explanations and maybe understandings of how, you know, things actually work in the game. Just something to keep in mind as we keep reading. More engaging AoE and single target damage scaling. While Havoc excels in burst, their sustained damage, especially in multi-target situations, can feel lackluster compared to other classes. Improvements to their AoE or scaling of their abilities could provide a more satisfying gameplay loop. So I don't think that's necessarily a problem. In a lot of cases, having a bursty damage profile is often preferred because it gives you more control. If they want to bring it back to sustained damage, all they need to do is bring back the BFA style of Havoc, because that's exactly what that was. That was pure sustain. If you look at a chart that shows the damage profile on a line, back in BFA, it was very, very, like, you know, little tiny bumps, but for the most part, it was pretty straight. If you look at it now, we have very big bumps. Then it comes down, time will pass, and then it'll go back up really high, and then come back down really low. And the good thing about that, why that's preferred, is because you can usually time those increases, those hills in your damage profile to coincide with things like increased damage amps on the bosses. You know, you can just time it with other buffs that you might be getting. Lust. New talent, Infernal Barrage. A talent that makes Fel Rush or Chaos Strike explode in a chain reaction after hitting multiple targets, dealing additional AoE damage. This would make AoE situations more dynamic and rewarding. Okay. ChatGPT, Mr. AI bot, I hate to break it to you, but Chaos Strike does not hit multiple targets. It is a single target ability, but okay, you know, good try, good effort. Scaling changes to Blade Dance and I-Beam. Reworking Blade Dance and I-Beam to scale more effectively with the Demon Hunter's primary stats, or adding synergies that reward skillful usage, such as increasing I-Beam's duration the more chaos damage they deal in a short period. Can make them feel more powerful in different fight phases. Adding synergies that reward skillful usage, such as increasing I-Beam's duration the more chaos damage they deal in a short period. I mean, we have that with Blind Fury. Technically, it increases the duration of I-Beam and increases the damage it does. You don't want to extend the duration of I-Beam too long, though, because keep in mind, you don't move while you're casting I-Beam. You are planted for as long as that channel is going. Filling role gaps with new mechanic, Demonic Empowerment. In line with their lore, Havoc Demon Hunters should have more abilities tied to their demonic heritage and might feel more empowered as they engage with stronger enemies. New mechanic, Demonic Empowerment. A resource or stacking buff that builds as the Demon Hunter fights and performs certain actions. Example, using abilities or dealing damage, okay? At maximum stats, the Demon Hunter could gain a powerful buff that temporarily increases their damage and survivability. This would give them a dynamic resource to manage during fights. I'm not necessarily sure that's what we want. The way that it's worded is you'd be gaining stacks of this thing, and then at max stacks, you get a buff. That doesn't give you much control because you are basically at the mercy of the amount of stacks that you have. You could get max stacks when you don't need the extra damage, or maybe right before you need the extra damage. So now you're wasting that buff. And I don't think we need another thing to try to manage during fights. I think right now we're pretty overworked. But again, this is, I guess this is a complete rework, so we wouldn't be putting this up against or including it with things we have right now in the game. Okay, visual and thematic overhaul. This is one that, like, we can't really argue against. I think everyone would agree that, you know, improving the graphics for Havoc would be incredible. There's nothing wrong with that, and I really hope they do it because we have some very outdated graphics. To help them feel more impactful and grounded in the war within, visual effects and animations could be updated. New metamorphosis forms. Give Metamorphosis a more dramatic visual effect with distinct, powerful changes to the Demon Hunter's appearance. These could vary depending on the type of Demon Hunter. Example, Fel Demon Hunter versus Arcane Demon Hunter. Not sure what that is. emphasizing their thematic power as they embody demonic energy. So I think, again, this is a ChatGPT mistake here. But what could be really cool, if you guys look up the lore of demon hunters, the way that they sort of embrace their demonic forms, or the ability to go into their demonic forms, they have to actually eat the heart of a specific demon, and consuming that heart from that demon gives them the innate sort of nature and abilities of that specific demon. So if you had like a Fel Hunter heart and you ate that, maybe that could reflect in your demon form. Or if you ate the heart of, I don't know what other kind of demons there are off the top of my head. An imp? Are those demons? Yeah, those are demons, right? You guys understand what I'm trying to say here, right? Your meta form could reflect the type of demon that you have attributed yourself to. More immersive chaos magic. Revamping animations for I-Beam and Chaos Strike to feel more intense would reinforce their status as destructive forces, ensuring that their power feels as epic as it should be. I don't really think there's anything wrong with the animations of I-Beam and Chaos Strike. I think they're fine. I mean, if they want to maybe update the same models, make them a bit more high fidelity, like for the I-Beam channel, that could be cool. But generally, I think it looks pretty good. Chaos Strike, the animation for Chaos Strike is actually really cool if you pay attention to it. Your character does like a little hop in the air, and he does like a 360 spin. It's actually pretty cool. By the way, guys, this is going to be a long video. We got lots to look over. We still have all the hero talent trees and the class and the spec tree, so buckle in. Quality of life improvements. Making the rotation smoother and the flow of abilities more intuitive would make the class feel more engaging and less frustrating to play. Reducing GCD clamps. Allowing for more flexibility in the rotation by reducing some of the global cooldowns or increasing resource regeneration would help players manage their abilities better without feeling overly punished by mistakes. I think what it means here is the cooldowns of some abilities, not necessarily the global cooldown. That's the cooldown of all of your abilities. When you press one ability, it puts all of your other abilities on cooldown. Usually spells are either on the global cooldown or they aren't. So maybe it means like maybe reducing the cooldown on something like Blur, or reducing the cooldown on Darkness, something like that. Movement enhancements. Given the mobile nature of the Demon Hunter, adding an ability or talent that lets them interact with the environment. Example, leap to specific targets. Okay, we have that. Fellblade. Quick movement in confined spaces. Fel Rush could improve their mobility even further, making them a versatile class in both raids and open world content. Honestly, I don't think we need any improvements to our movement. I think we're pretty good on that front. Maybe that's just me though. These updates would make the Havoc Demon Hunter not just more viable in endgame content, but also more fun to play by deepening their identity and improving their utility across multiple scenarios. The goal is to make them feel like powerful demonic warriors that strike fear into enemies while maintaining a high skill ceiling that rewards expertise. Again, that's kind of what we have now. We do and we don't. There is a very high skill ceiling that rewards you higher than if you didn't perform at that high skill ceiling, but unfortunately the output that you get at the top of the skill ceiling still pales in comparison to some other classes. So I think that's where we're falling short. Playing your Demon Hunter and using movement for damage at a high level, you know, using inertia, using momentum correctly, is going to give you a lot more DPS than not using it. So I do think that we have a high skill ceiling right now, but it just doesn't keep up with other classes. Creating a brand new hero talent tree adjacent to the Aldrachi Rework talent tree for the Havoc Demon Hunter would focus on expanding the Demon Hunter's identity by incorporating themes from the Legion's Burning Crusades, ancient demonic power, and mastery over chaos magic. This new talent tree would give players additional playstyle options while providing fresh abilities and mechanics that would synergize with their already existing abilities. Okay, so now we're getting into the fun stuff. Let's call this new talent tree Infernal Vanguard. A path focused on embracing the demonic forces of destruction, command over fel magic, and greater resilience in battle. Alright, so that's all good. The focus here is on damage, defensive power, and empowering the Demon Hunter's mastery of destruction. I'm not gonna lie, this sounds a lot like Felskard. Infernal Vanguard Talent Tree Overview. Theme. The Infernal Vanguard focuses on maximizing chaos magic, enhancing self-sustain through demonic powers, and increasing durability and crowd control while retaining the agile and high-burst DPS capabilities of Havoc. It offers a more aggressive approach to using fel powers to control enemies and their surroundings. So far, this is all just like flowery words. It's kind of saying a whole lot of nothing, but as we read further, we're going to get more details. The explanation of what this is, the theme, like I said, it sounds just like Felskard. Key themes and goals of the Infernal Vanguard tree. Empowerment through demons, emphasizing greater use of demonic power and the infernal forces. Chaos synergy, synergizing with chaos-based abilities to make their effects more potent and varied. Increased survivability, adding new mechanics for sustained healing and defense, reflecting the hellish resilience of the Demon Hunter. We do have a hellish resilience. We have gotten no changes to our class and spec tree for an entire year, and for some reason we're still playing it. That's the definition of resilience. AoE domination, increased AoE abilities to turn the Demon Hunter into a field-controlling force of destruction. Whoa. Okay, core talents. Number 1, so this is assumedly at the top of the tree, the top of the hero talent tree. Demon Flame. That looks familiar. Demon Surge, maybe? Effect. Causes Chaos Strike to deal an additional 10% of the damage dealt as Fel damage over 4 seconds. I don't think Fel damage exists in the game. I might be wrong, but I think it's either Chaos damage or Fire damage. It could be Fel Fire damage, which I think is a combination of Chaos and Fire, or maybe it's Arcane and Fire, not sure. That sounds like Soul Scar or Burning Blades, but just on Chaos Strike. Okay, Infernal Barrage. Cooldown 30 seconds. So this is an ability that you press with a cooldown of 30 seconds. Unleash a barrage of chaos-fueled projectiles that explode in an AoE around your target. Deals high damage to the target and enemies around it. So this sounds like a targeted Fel Barrage that does splash damage to enemies around your target on a 30-second cooldown. It could be cool. Could be cool. That's a very short cooldown, though. 30 seconds is very short. Fel-infused reflexes. This is an instant passive. Increases your dodge chance by 10% and causes your demon's bite to have a 20% chance to trigger a secondary Fel-infused strike that deals additional AoE chaos damage. This is encouraging you to use Demon's Bite over Demon Blades. Dodge chance by 10% is odd. Because if we go in game, we look at Blur, for example. Blur is giving us 50% chance to dodge, and then reduces damage taken by 30 for 10 seconds. You would think if you're trying to improve on that, you would give an extra 10% to the damage reduction and not the dodge, because dodge still isn't guaranteed. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. Empowered Metamorphosis. Cooldown 3 minutes. Okay, so meta is back on a 3-minute cooldown. While in Metamorphosis, you gain a 20% increase to your chaos damage dealt, and your movement speed is increased by 15%. Additionally, Chaos Strike causes a shockwave that stuns all nearby enemies for 2 seconds. Okay, there's a few problems here. First of all, it's giving us 20% increase to our chaos damage dealt, so that's majority of our abilities. That's pretty much everything. On its own, that sounds okay, but as we read further, there's going to be more and more buffs that are going to stack on top of that, and it might become problematic. The second part is Chaos Strike causing a shockwave that stuns all nearby enemies for 2 seconds. Think of how much we spam Chaos Strike. When we have nothing else to press, we are spamming Chaos Strike back to back to back to back to back. It has no cooldown. Chaos Strike doesn't have a cooldown. As long as you have enough resources to use it, you can press it. Meaning, you could just keep everything stunned forever. For as long as you have resources to spend, you can keep enemies stunned. That would be insanely powerful. Chaos Conduit. Instant passive. Each time you deal chaos damage, you store 5% of the damage dealt as chaos power. At 100% chaos power, you may activate Infernal Torrent, which causes your next chaos strike to deal 100% additional chaos damage in a burst of AoE. Let's read that again. Each time you deal chaos damage, you store 5% of the damage dealt as chaos power. At 100% chaos power, you may activate Infernal Torrent, which causes your next chaos strike. I don't like how things are buffing Chaos Strike, because Chaos Strike is almost like a filler ability, and we're like I said, we're spamming it. We're pressing it many, many, many times in a fight. So to just buff one of them by an additional 100%, and I guess it's doing burst AoE damage, but again, just to be buffing one Chaos Strike, that's like buffing 1 out of 100 uses of it. Doesn't seem quite right. Ideally, what you would do with something like this is have it buff an ability that you press maybe every 40 seconds, depending on how quickly you build up this chaos power. Ideally you would maybe build it up in between uses of that 40-second ability. So you use it once, you don't have it empowered. Then as you're waiting for it to come back up off cooldown again, you're building up, you have 100% chaos power right before it comes up off cooldown. You activate Infernal Torrent, and then your next use of this, medium cooldown ability is modified and does more damage. Demonic Rebirth. Cooldown 2 minutes. So this isn't an ability, but this is, I think it's a passive. If you drop below 30% health, Demonic Rebirth instantly restores 50% of your health and gives you a temporary 10% damage reduction for 15 seconds. This ability can only be triggered once every 3 minutes. So this is like a cheat death almost, but not quite. So you drop below 30% health, you get 50% of your health back. Is it 50% of your current health or 50% of your total health? Gives you temporary 10% damage reduction for 15 seconds. That extra 10% damage reduction probably isn't going to do much because you've already taken the damage. So an extra 10% DR for 15 seconds, I guess it could help. Maybe if there's more incoming damage, but yeah, I don't know if that would do that much. This ability can only be triggered once every 3 minutes. Wrath of the Legion. Cooldown 1 minute. Call down an Infernal to crash into the battlefield, dealing massive AoE chaos damage to enemies within a 10-yard radius. The Infernal remains for 10 seconds, periodically dealing AoE damage in a smaller radius. See, I really like this one. This one is really, really cool. So think of this, right? You're in Mythic Plus, you have a targeting reticle for this ability, place it. It's like that Warlock ability that slams down an Infernal. So you see a big Infernal smash down, it does big chaos damage on impact, and then it just stands there pulsating AoE within a 10-yard radius for 10 seconds. That could be really, really cool because you can place it and have it continually do AoE damage in a certain area while you're somewhere else fighting maybe the single target boss while there's a pack of ads over there that the Infernal is pounding away at. I think that could be really, really cool. If the devs need some ideas on what to add whenever we get our rework, if we're getting our rework, this could be one to maybe iterate on and see if you could make this a reality. This would be really cool. Additional synergies and utility talents. Hellfire Resilience. Instant passive. Your Demon Spikes ability now reduces damage taken by an additional 10%. Demon Spikes heals you for a small amount each time you block an attack while it's active. I still don't quite understand how Demon Spikes would slot in for Havoc with Blur. Maybe we don't have Blur, maybe we just have Demon Spikes, I'm not sure. Fel Overload, instant passive. After using Fel Rush, your next Chaos Strike will hit all enemies within a 6-yard radius, causing additional Fel damage. That could be cool. That could be cool. So you're not getting a buff from Fel Rush that you have to try to fit abilities in. It's just buffing your next Chaos Strike. But again, we run into the problem of buffing Chaos Strike, something that we're spamming, but maybe that's a good thing. You don't need to use that Fel Rush for maybe your Blade Dance or something. You're not trying to line it up with other things. You just know you're always going to have a Chaos Strike available. So maybe I'm looking at this the wrong way. Maybe that could be a good thing. Infernal Servant, cooldown 3 minutes. So this is another 3-minute cooldown on top of the Metamorphosis one that we had. Where was it? Empowered Metamorphosis, cooldown 3 minutes. So keep in mind, Empowered Metamorphosis is giving us 20% increase damage, chaos damage, and now we're getting Infernal Servant. Summon a demonic servant to fight by your side for 15 seconds, dealing significant damage with chaos abilities. This servant increases your chaos damage dealt by 10% while it's active. So we're going to have 2 buttons, 2 3-minute cooldowns on separate buttons that we're going to have to press essentially at the same time, both giving us increased chaos damage. The meta was giving us 20%. This is giving us 10%, and whatever damage the demon does. So I'm already seeing a bit of button bloat happening where we're kind of crafting this 1-button build here where we're just going to be spamming Chaos Strike, and then the rest of our action bar is just all these separate little cooldowns. Rising Chaos. Each time Blade Dance hits an enemy, it generates 10% more Fury. Okay, first of all, hold up. Blade Dance does not generate Fury, so there's a mistake. Also, we've seen something like this before, I forget where. When it says each time Blade Dance hits an enemy, is that each slash of Blade Dance? Because it does 4 slashes. Is it each slash on each enemy? Do all those count as an individual one? Or is it just the 4 slashes? So it generates 10% more Fury. That's actually not much. Like, for example, let's just say, hypothetically, Blade Dance gives you 10 Fury. If this is giving 10% more Fury, that's going to give you 1 extra point of Fury. Now, maybe if it is going off of each individual instance of damage from Blade Dance, that could be worth it. That could be very powerful. And it applies a debuff that increases chaos damage taken by the target by 5% for 8 seconds. So we not only have the 20% from Empowered Metamorphosis, the 10% from Infernal Servant, now we have another 5% from Blade Dance. That's a lot of extra damage. Then finally, Demonic Storm, cooldown 2 minutes. So this is another button, but now this is on 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes. Creates a massive whirlwind of fel energy around you, dealing high AoE chaos damage and pulling enemies towards you. So this sounds like that Death Knight ability that you press and, slappy hands, grippy hands, whatever you want to call it. That's, Death Knights are not going to like that. Death Knights are not going to like that because that's the one unique thing that they bring to a raid comp is grips, whether it's a single target grip or an AoE grip, and then giving that to Havoc Demon Hunter as well. That's going to put some DKs out of business. Okay, playstyle summary. AoE mastery with abilities like Wrath of the Legion, Infernal Barrage, and Fel Overload. Players will have a much stronger AoE presence. I think our AoE presence is pretty good. Self-sustain and durability. Demonic Rebirth, Hellfire Resilience, and Infernal Servant provide tools for healing, damage reduction, and survivability while allowing the Havoc Demon Hunter to better withstand damage and continue to deal destruction. Resource management. Chaos Conduit provides an engaging mechanic where players need to manage chaos power, rewarding high skill play with powerful damage bursts, further reinforcing the idea of Demon Hunter harnessing fel magic. Demonic power. The Infernal Vanguard talent tree focuses on embracing the demonic power, granting the Havoc Demon Hunter a more sinister, destructive presence on the battlefield, with various summons and abilities that reflect the Legion's terrifying might. So somebody correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's maybe a misunderstanding of how demon hunters are affiliated with demons and the Legion. Demon hunters are not part of the Burning Legion. Demon hunters are demon hunters. Illidan was against the Burning Legion. We don't have the Legion at our disposal. We can't summon in the Legion. We don't have the powers of the Legion. We are hunters of the Legion. I could be wrong. Hey, if I'm wrong, let me know in the comments. That's how I understood it. This Infernal Vanguard tree would make Havoc Demon Hunters more versatile in combat, allowing them to switch between rapid burst damage and sustained AoE destruction while leaning into their demonic heritage. It just sounds a lot of like what we already have, but now we get into some cool stuff here. So check this out. Creating a third spec for Demon Hunters that combines single target and AoE abilities into one cohesive playstyle that would allow a more dynamic, flexible, and customizable class experience. This spec would need to balance these two types of damage while ensuring both are viable in different encounter settings without sacrificing the core identity of the Demon Hunter. Essentially what they're saying here, what Mr. Chatbot GPT AI robot is saying, is that he wants to create a spec that will give you no reason to play any other spec. There's no reason to play the other ones because this one does it all. It's got it all figured out. Let's call this new spec Fel Striker, a spec that merges both single target precision and devastating AoE capabilities, allowing the Demon Hunter to adjust their playstyle based on the demands of the encounter. This would be a hybrid spec focused on versatility, giving the players the ability to thrive in both raids and dungeon environments without needing to respec between fights. Okay, I'm intrigued, curious, and very confused. Fel Striker is a versatile demon hunter that harnesses the full destructive potential of fel magic. Their abilities allow them to deal sustained, single target damage with powerful chaos strikes, while also unleashing torrents of AoE destruction when needed. Their playstyle focuses on balancing the right abilities for the situation, being able to quickly adapt their approach to either single target boss fights or sweeping crowds of enemies. The core mechanic of the Fel Striker would be the dynamic use of fel empowerment. This resource builds over time as you deal damage and can be spent to enhance either your single target or AoE abilities depending on the situation. So at its core, essentially this spec does not have Fury as a resource. It's still a builder spender. So instead of generating Fury, we're generating fel empowerment, but then we're spending the resource to buff abilities. Fel empowerment. This resource builds as you deal damage with chaos abilities. It is generated through abilities like Chaos Strike, Blade Dance, and Eye Beam. The resource can be spent to augment either single target abilities for precision strikes or AoE abilities for explosive damage, depending on how you spend the resource. Resource management. Single target empowerment. When you are dealing with a single target, fel empowerment stacks will focus on buffing the power of your Chaos Strike and Annihilation. AoE empowerment. When fighting multiple enemies, fel empowerment will shift to augmenting Blade Dance, Fel Barrage, and other AoE abilities for greater spread damage. So does this have like a detection? Kind of like what we have in game now, where there's certain abilities that do something and you're only fighting one target, and as soon as another target is introduced, then it switches to the AoE empowerment. That could be a good thing and a bad thing. We all know how that has worked out for certain things. You know, for Focused Hatred and Isolated Prey, they've had their problems. They've tried to fix it, and they didn't quite fix it. They made it worse. Fel Striker talent tree structure. Fel Fury passive. Your Chaos Strike and Annihilation generate 10% more Fel empowerment. Chaotic precision. Chaos Strike critically hits 20% harder when Fel empowerment is above 50%. Okay, so you're keeping your resource above 50% and Chaos Strike is doing 20% more critical strike damage. Fel Barrage AoE ability, 30 seconds. That's a very short cooldown. That is shorter than what Fel Barrage is right now. Launch a burst of Fel energy at your target that spreads to nearby enemies, dealing damage. This ability consumes Fel empowerment to deal bonus damage for each stack consumed. Okay. At the very base level, this is a builder, spender for single target, spender for AoE. Got it. Infernal Momentum passive. Every 3 seconds, gain a stack of Infernal Momentum, increasing your movement speed and Fel empowerment generation by 5%. Stacks up to 5 times. So how does this work, right? Like if it's every 3 seconds, you gain 5% each stack, stacks up to 5 times. What happens when you reach 5 stacks? Does it then diminish? Does it fade? Or are you just at 5 stacks for the rest of the fight? What if you're fighting a raid boss? After the first 30 seconds, then you have the buff for the rest of the fight? Because that means you're probably not going to have this buff for your opener. This is giving you a buff when you don't need it as much and not when you actually need it the most. Focused Chaos. When Fel empowerment is spent on single target abilities, it increases your annihilation damage by 20%. What other single target abilities do we have? We have Chaos Strike and Annihilation, right? We know those are single target. I guess we have Fel Blade, if that's still part of our toolkit. Demon's Bite, if we're taking that. Demon Blades, but those aren't spenders. Those are builders, so I'm not sure. Whirlwind of Chaos, AoE ability. 1 minute cooldown. So this is another button, guys. Another button to put on your bars. Spend 50% of your Fel empowerment to unleash a sweeping blade dance that also causes a 5-yard radius explosion for each enemy hit, dealing Fel damage. Again, we're doing Fel damage, not sure if that's actually a thing or not. Causes a 5-yard radius explosion for each enemy hit. So if you hit 5 enemies with your blade dance, that's doing 5 explosions, all within the same 5-yard radius at the same time. Why not just make it one big hit? Why not just modify the damage of one explosion based on how many targets you hit? Okay, moving on. Demonic Fury. Passive. While Metamorphosis is active, your abilities generate 50% more Fel empowerment. Cataclysmic Chaos. Every time I-Beam hits an enemy, it causes a chain reaction of Fel energy, dealing 10% additional Fel empowerment damage to all nearby targets. That sounds cool. Maybe if it had like a, chains of Fel energy going between them, that could be really cool. Infernal Overload. Cooldown 2 minutes. Spend 100% of your Fel empowerment to cause a massive explosion of chaos at your target, dealing massive AoE damage around your target. The larger your Fel empowerment pool, the larger the blast radius and damage. This one is confusing to me because it's saying you spend 100% of your Fel empowerment, so that's the resource you're building up. The larger your Fel empowerment pool, the larger the blast. We haven't seen anything that is saying you can increase the capacity of your Fel empowerment. Not yet, at least. Okay, additional talents and synergies. Unholy Strikes. Every time you spend Fel empowerment on Annihilation or Chaos Strike, your next Fel Barrage gains 15% more damage. Every time you spend Fel empowerment on Annihilation or Chaos Strike. Again, that's a button we're spamming. So are we encouraged to spend on Annihilation, then do a Fel Barrage, and then back to Chaos Strike spamming? I guess Fel Barrage goes on cooldown. I believe it was a 30-second cooldown. So we'll be getting a buff towards our Fel Barrage multiple times after that, and we just can't use it for another 30 seconds. Fel Grit. Increase your total health by 15% and your damage reduction while in Metamorphosis by 10%. Okay, that seems pretty powerful. Total health by 15 and your damage reduction by 10%. That's big. Focus Fire, single target. Fel empowerment spent on Chaos Strike reduces the cooldown of your Chaos Nova by 5 seconds. Wow, okay. So again, Chaos Strike is something we're spamming. We're pressing that button a lot. And each time we press it, we're reducing the cooldown of Chaos Nova, our AoE stun, by 5 seconds. That seems a little strong. Just gonna say that right now. That's very strong. Fel Storm, AoE. When you use Fel Barrage, it has a chance to trigger a mini Fel Nova, dealing Fel damage to all nearby enemies. Okay, but why? Has a chance to trigger a mini Fel Nova. What's the chance? Does it do damage around you to all nearby enemies so it comes off of the player? I don't know. Things like this confuse me because I look at it and I'm like, why not just bake the extra damage into Fel Barrage itself? Playstyle summary. Adaptive playstyle. The Fel Striker will constantly balance between single target and AoE scenarios by managing the Fel empowerment resource. You'll generate it through standard attacks and spend it either on devastating single target abilities like Annihilation or Chaos Strike, or unleash it in powerful AoE bursts like Fel Barrage and Whirlwind of Chaos. That's a big ability name. Dynamic Combat. The spec will require players to adapt based on encounter needs. In single target phases, they'll focus on generating and spending Fel Empowerment efficiently to maximize damage. In AoE situations, they'll shift their focus to spreading that power to decimate multiple enemies simultaneously. Synergies. Talents like Unholy Strikes or Fel Grit will allow for greater customization, letting players fine-tune whether they want to focus on burst AoE damage or more sustained single-target pressure depending on the needs of the encounter. What did those two do? Unholy Strikes or Fel Grit? Each time you spend Fel Empowerment on Annihilation or Chaos Strike, your next Fel Barrage gains 15% more total health damage by 10%. I'm not sure how Fel Grit helps with that, like it's saying greater customization, but whatever. Again, this is AI. Okay, we're moving on to a new talent tree. Reworking the Havoc Demon Hunter talent tree to focus solely on single target damage would require streamlining the existing talents, enhancing the Demon Hunter's precision and burst damage while also maintaining a balanced, engaging rotation. The idea is to make Havoc Demon Hunters masters of sustained single target damage with powerful, precise abilities that make them feared on bosses and in PvP scenarios. Let's call this new spec Doombringer, a specialized single target build for Havoc, focusing on precision strikes, sustained chaos damage, and maximizing burst windows for devastating attacks. Okay, it sounds a lot like the last one. Chaos Precision. The core mechanic of Doombringer revolves around honing the power of chaos into sharp, punishing blows. Each time you use Chaos Strike or Annihilation, you increase the damage dealt by your next chaos ability by 5%, stacking up to 5 times. The idea is to reward precision and allow the Demon Hunter to chain their abilities into an unrelenting assault. Okay. Each time you use Chaos Strike or Annihilation, those are, again, abilities that we're spamming. You increase the damage dealt by your next Chaos Strike, by your next Chaos ability by 5%. So depending on how many abilities we actually have to use with this build, that could be problematic because, just as a hypothetical, let's say that we have something like Immolation Aura, which is a buff that we have to keep up to keep ourselves generating fury. What if we've pressed Chaos Strike twice? We have 2 stacks of the buff, right? So we're up to 10%. But now in our rotation, we have to press Immolation Aura because we need to keep our fury generation happening. We're forced to press Immolation Aura, which then consumes those 2 stacks. And now we've buffed our Immolation Aura, which might not be the optimal thing to be giving a damage increase to. Maybe we were trying to get to 5 stacks so we could give a big 20% increase to a different harder hitting ability. Okay, Doombringer talent tree structure. Unyielding Chaos, this is a passive. Increases the damage of Chaos Strike and Annihilation by 10% for every 10% of your health missing. Oh no. Oh no. This is going to spark some degenerate play. This is where you would tell your healer in Mythic Plus to keep you under 50% health, never heal you up above 50% so you can keep a 50% increase damage buff to your Chaos Strike and Annihilation. This sounds good on paper. This would be very, very bad to have. You'd be standing in puddles, purposely taking damage. You'd be not using your health pots. You'd be not pressing your defensive cooldowns because you're rewarded for taking damage. You are rewarded for playing poorly. I don't like that. Precision Strikes. Each time Chaos Strike deals a critical hit, it generates 10% additional fury for the next 6 seconds. I'm assuming we'd probably always have that buff. We'd just always be generating more fury. Demonic Power. Your Fel Rush and Demon's Bite generate 15% more fury. Again, Fel Rush doesn't generate fury. Maybe it does in this alternate universe. And increase the effectiveness of your Chaos Strike by 5% for 10 seconds. So again, we're pressing Fel Rush, and that's giving us a buff to our Chaos Strike. Chaotic Barrage. Every 3rd Chaos Strike causes an additional burst of damage, dealing 50% of the original strike's damage to nearby enemies. So that's adding a cleave to our single target ability. Okay. Metamorphosis Mastery. While in Metamorphosis, your Chaos Strike deals 30% more damage, and its cooldown is reduced by 1 second for every 3 Chaos Strikes used. Huh. This is starting to sound like a very one-button-centric build. We've played something, not exactly like this, but we've played builds in the past that solely focus on just spamming Chaos Strike. I remember in Shadowlands, we had a certain way that we were balanced where we just never pressed Blade Dance. All we did was press I-Beam and Chaos Strike, and that's kind of the vibe I'm getting from this. Annihilator's Precision increases the damage of Annihilation by 20% and reduces the cost of Annihilation by 10 fury. We're just piling on the buffs to Annihilation. Tier 3, Chaos Surge, 1 minute. So this is another button. You trigger a surge of power, causing your next Chaos Strike or Annihilation to deal 100% increased damage and refund 50% of the fury spent on the ability. Again, same problem that I've said for all of these things. We're buffing an ability for one use. We're spamming that ability. We're spamming it over and over and over and over. To use a 1 minute cooldown to buff one use of that ability out of maybe, hypothetically, 100 uses of it, isn't quite going to add up to what I think they might want it to be. Searing Fury. After using Metamorphosis, your Chaos Strike critical hits cause the target to burn for 15% of the damage dealt over 6 seconds. Wow. Okay. Demon's Grasp. Chaos Strike reduces the target's movement speed by 30% for 4 seconds, and the duration is increased by 1 second for each stack of Chaos Precision you have. There's so much power packed into Chaos Strike with this build. Like, everything is modifying Chaos Strike. I'm sure there's more to come. Infernal Surge. Cooldown 2 minutes, so another button. Channel the full power of your Metamorphosis, causing a Chaos Strike to erupt in a wave of demonic energy around you, dealing 150% of the damage dealt to all nearby enemies. Critical Devastation. Critical hits with Annihilation increase the damage of your next Chaos Strike by 25% for 6 seconds. Brutal Frenzy. Metamorphosis also causes Chaos Strike to deal an additional 10% of its damage as Chaos damage over time for 6 seconds. Okay. This is getting a little out of hand now. Doom's Embrace. Annihilation causes you to instantly gain 20% Fury when it critically hits, and your next Chaos Strike after an Annihilation deals 50% more damage. If you're staying in demon form, you're gonna be using a lot of Annihilations consecutively. The only time you would ever press a Chaos Strike after an Annihilation is if you fall out of demon form. Endless Destruction. While in Metamorphosis, your damage is increased by 25%, and the cooldown of Chaos Surge is reduced by 30%. What was Chaos Surge? Oh, this one. The 1 minute cooldown that buffs one use of Chaos Strike or Annihilation. Right. Chaos Overload. Cooldown 3 minutes. Hey, another button. Fully overload your Chaos powers, causing your Annihilation and Chaos Strike to deal 300% increased damage for the next 10 seconds. That's crazy. That's a lot of damage. Doombringer playstyle summary. Single target precision. The focus on Chaos Strike, Annihilation, and Metamorphosis. That's pretty much all this build focuses on. Those are the 2 buttons you press. Allows the Doombringer Demon Hunter to deliver sustained single target damage while weaving in powerful bursts through Chaos Surge and Infernal Surge. The rotation will emphasize maximizing damage with Chaos Strike while taking advantage of Annihilation as the primary finisher. Does it ever emphasize maximizing damage with Chaos Strike? That is exactly what it does. I couldn't have said it better myself. Precision and Synergy. The Chaos Precision mechanic rewards players for chaining Chaos Strike and Annihilations in quick succession, stacking up to 5 times to unleash devastating damage. This will require careful timing and skills to manage. Really? Sounds like we just spam the one button, making the spec rewarding for skilled players who can maintain their buffs and cooldowns. High burst potential. The spec is designed to burst with immense power during Metamorphosis and Chaos Surge windows, allowing for highly impactful moments of explosive damage, especially during key moments in boss fights. Focused utility. The Doombringer Demon Hunter will provide high sustained damage output on single targets, perfect for raid, bosses, or any encounter where consistency damage is key. They also have some utility through movement speed reductions with Demon's Grasp, and burn over time effects with Searing Fury, allowing them to apply some minor control while dealing major damage. This new Doombringer specialization would elevate the Havoc Demon Hunter as a powerful, single target damage dealer with a high skill ceiling, focused on precision and powerful, impactful damage moments. This does not sound like a high skill ceiling to me. Maybe I'm just not comprehending it properly, but this sounds like we are spamming one button, Chaos Strike. Okay, and now it looks like it's going into reworking the Aldrachi Rework talent tree. So let's take a look at this. Reworking the Aldrachi Rework Hero Talent tree means taking the core ideas of this Demon Hunter spec and expanding on them to create a unique and compelling gameplay experience that is distinct from the standard Havoc and Vengeance talent trees. The Aldrachi Rework theme revolves around a Demon Hunter who channels the demonic energy of the Aldrachi, a now extinct once dominant race of demons who were slain by the Illidari. This class would be focused on wielding both Fel and Shadow energies, using them to deliver devastating attacks and manipulate the flow of combat to their advantage. It would incorporate both sustained damage and dynamic resource manipulation, whatever that means, where players can dynamically switch between aggressive, high damage burst phases and tactical control phases that enhance their team's performance. Okay, let's see how this is different. I'm very curious to see what they've done here. Core mechanic, Aldrachi energy. Okay. It's very similar to the other ones. The core mechanic revolves around generating Aldrachi energy. That's horrible. A resource built up through dealing damage, especially through Fel and Shadow damage abilities. Once enough energy is accumulated, the Aldrachi Rework can unleash powerful Aldrachi abilities, which are a mix of both damage dealing and control effects. Okay, that said a whole lot of nothing. Aldrachi power phases. The Reaver has 2 distinct power phases they can trigger by spending their Aldrachi energy, Fel Fury and Shadow Veil. Fel Fury phase. When Fel Fury is active, the Aldrachi Reaver focuses on explosive damage output, greatly enhancing their chaos-based abilities like Fel Rush and Chaos Strike. When Shadow Veil is active, the Reaver manipulates the shadows to deal damage over time and debuff enemies, providing utility to the team with crowd control effects and defensive cooldowns. The player can shift between these phases by spending Aldrachi energy on different abilities, letting them adapt to the flow of combat, either by amplifying damage or enhancing control over the battlefield. A lot of these seem to have the same sort of concept where you're building up a resource that is exclusive to that spec and not just like a shared resource type of thing that we have now, and then spending that resource to buff abilities. It's kind of a strange concept because usually you just spend your resource to use the abilities and less about buffing them. So it's kind of weird for me to wrap my head around. Fel Frenzy passive. Your Fel Rush and Chaos Strike have a 10% chance to generate 20 Aldrachi energy per hit. Aldrachi Fury, each Fel Rush and Fel Blade critically hits. Oh, so it's saying it guarantees critical strikes with those abilities. Increase your damage dealt by 5% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times. That's pretty powerful. That's very powerful. Infernal Plunge. Active ability, cooldown 20 seconds. Okay, this is a button we press, a 20-second cooldown. Spend 50 Aldrachi energy to launch yourself into the air and crash down upon your target, dealing X damage and stunning them for 3 seconds. It's weird that this explanation, this tooltip, actually put like a damage variable or a damage number when none of them have up until now. Fel Chained Blade, active ability. So again, another button. No, because it says your Chaos Strike chains to a nearby enemy. So it's not an active ability. This is a passive, or a modifier, I guess. Your Chaos Strike chains to a nearby enemy, dealing 40% of its damage up to 3 additional enemies within 8 yards. A lot of these builds really like Chaos Strike. That's what I'm noticing. Aldrachi Resilience. Your Fel Fury, when active, reduces all incoming damage by 10% for 6 seconds. What is Fel Fury? Oh, Fel Fury phase. So when you go into the Fel Fury phase, you get a 10% DR. So I wonder if you can like dip in and out of that phase. Go from the Fel Fury phase into the Shadow phase, then back into the Fel Fury phase to get the 10%, then back into the Shadow phase, then back into Fel Fury to get 10% again. Eclipse of Darkness. Activating Shadow Veil causes your next 3 Chaos Strikes to have a 50% chance to deal an additional 50% of their damage as shadow damage. 3 Chaos Strikes that have a 50% chance to deal additional 50% of their damage as shadow damage. Seems like a gamble. Aldrachi Surge. Cooldown 90 seconds. So again, another button. Spend 100 Aldrachi energy to unleash an explosive surge of both Fel and Shadow energy, dealing X damage to all enemies in a 15-yard radius and reducing their damage dealt by 15% for 6 seconds. Reducing their damage dealt by 15%. Wow. Does that work on raid bosses? That's kind of insane. Even just anything in Mythic Plus, if you can reduce something that's going to do maybe potentially a one-shot to your team, if there's a big AoE burst or something, reducing their damage dealt by 15% could save your whole team. Fury of the Aldrachi. While in Fel Fury, your critical strike chance is increased by 10% and your Chaos Strike deals 20% more damage. Of course. Dark Convergence. Shadow Veil reduces the cooldown of all your crowd control abilities like Imprison and Chaos Nova by 50% for its duration. Damn. Okay, that's definitely a PvP type of thing. That's crazy. Aldrachi Warbringer. Your Fel Rush generates 10% more Aldrachi energy, and each annihilation increases your damage dealt by 5% for 5 seconds. Does that stack, or is it stuck at 5%? Chaos Vanguard. Your Fel Fury now causes all Fel Rush and Chaos Strike abilities to reduce their cooldown by 1 second for every critical hit you land while in Fel Fury. Chaos Strike doesn't have a cooldown. That's a spammable ability. Like I said, as long as you have enough resource, you can press the button. Veil of Shadows. Cooldown 60 seconds. Another button. Spend 40 Aldrachi energy to cloak yourself in the shadows, becoming immune to all crowd control effects for 5 seconds and increasing your damage dealt by 25% for the duration. Okay, so this is problematic because this is encouraging you to use a utility/defensive thing to get a damage buff out of it. So instead of using this ability to maybe counter a crowd control thing, you're forced to press it during your opener to get that 25% damage dealt increase. So definitely don't like that. Soul Rend. Your Chaos Strike causes the target to bleed for 8 seconds, for 8% of the damage dealt over 6 seconds. This effect increased by 2% for every 10 Aldrachi energy consumed. Aldrachi Cataclysm. After using Fel Fury, your next Fel Rush or Fel Blade deals 200% more damage and reduces the target's damage dealt by 15%. Does that stack with the 25%? Holy smokes. Was it 25%? No, it was 15. So 15 on top of 15. That's 30% decreased damage done. That's crazy. Shadowborn Reaver. Shadow Veil grants 100% increased movement speed, and your Chaos Strike deals 15% more damage to enemies who are affected by Shadow Veil debuffs. Aldrachi Reaver playstyle summary. Hybrid damage dealer. The Aldrachi Reaver spec offers a versatile playstyle that can switch between two distinct damage modes, depending on the resource management and situational needs. Fel Fury for intense burst and Shadow Veil for debuffing and crowd control. The spec requires the player to balance resource generation and ability usage, allowing them to shift from chaotic, destructive damage to manipulating the battlefield with control and utility. Aldrachi energy management. Players will need to manage Aldrachi energy effectively, knowing when to channel it into Fel Fury for damage. Okay, so I'm going to stop reading these off here because this is getting to be a very long video, but if you guys want to read this for yourself, there's still a lot more to go through, to be honest. If you guys want to read this on your own, I'll put a link to it down in the description of this video. Again, thanks to Kaiba for posting this and letting me know about it. It's been very interesting to read. One of the few takeaways that I think we should all get from this is that there is possibility for cool and unique things to be done for our class. Yes, a lot of these have problems. A lot of them are just buffing Chaos Strike, but there's some creativeness here. There's some things that we could take and maybe work on, maybe iterate on, and incorporate them into what we have to get something cool. So if you're leaving this video with confusion, I'm sorry, I'm confused too, but this should give you hope. This should give you a lot of hope that there is potential for us in the future. So if you like this video, give it a like, make sure you sub to the YouTube channel, and the end of the month for November is almost here, which means the giveaway for the 3 Fel Blaze Cycle motorcycle things is almost upon us. You guys have until the 1st of December to enter. Again, you can enter by leaving a comment on this video, as well as any video I have posted during the month of November. Each comment on each video gives you 1 entry into the contest, so make sure you go back and comment on previous videos. All right, see you in the next one. Peace.